Imagine you're in a bad, unfulfilling marriage, you're a professor at a university, and life is rather unremarkable. I just finished Stoner by John Williams, and this is going to be a different video from my usual video essays because I have a lot of thoughts on this one, especially some conflicting negative and positive thoughts. Books can sometimes find us at an interesting time in our life where our personal biases and experiences can cloud the way we view a book. Now, this does happen with most books. Obviously, we come to a novel with our own lives and experiences. However, I think sometimes when it hits too close to home, it can cloud your ability to enjoy the book fully. I think that makes it fun to discuss because I've seen a lot of people online recommending this book and giving it a lot of praise, and I can't say that I agree. So let's get into it. And although I love my usual positive deep dives, I'm excited to talk about something that stirred up a little more emotion for me. So our protagonist here, William Stoner, grew up on a hard-working farm with his parents. He eventually decides to leave his parents behind and go study at a university, despite them wanting him to stay on the farm. And then he meets Edith, and boy do I have a lot of thoughts on Edith. From the very beginning, Edith is distant, she's cold, they never had a good relationship to begin with. She doesn't treat him well at all, which we will get into. He ends up becoming a professor at the university that he was studying at. My issue with this character is that he doesn't express much passion for anything. His one great love in his life, which should be teaching and literature, which is what he teaches, he doesn't even express it with that much passion throughout the novel. The whole novel is very mundane. I recently just watched Dead Poets Society. Watching a teacher like Robin Williams in that movie express so much love and passion and unconventional thinking towards his students is great. And then I was reading this wondering, why is this guy so dull, kind of? Although I think that's the point of the novel, is that he is sort of unremarkable and dull, and it does stir something in me. Here's where I think being a reader is a lot of fun because we're able to call ourselves out for our personal biases and judgments. I was reading this and I was able to ask myself, why am I so angered by someone that wants to live a mediocre life? Why is he pissing me off so bad? So what if he wants to love things in his own quiet and subtle way? Just because I'm someone who lives life with their heart on their sleeves doesn't mean everybody has to in order to love something. I approach life in a way that I'm very grateful for life. I love life. I try to live every day to the fullest. And I think that if this is truly our only lifetime, then we should live with our hearts on our sleeves and to the fullest and love everything passionately. And it's okay to get your heart broken and put yourself out there. And so for me, I just found this character horribly unrelatable. And it's not like every character I read has to be relatable, but he was annoying me because I just wanted to shake him and say, can't you just have some passion in this life or something? I do think that it's very realistic. How many people in your life do you know like this? They just kind of live in the mediocre. Everything is just kind of fine. They don't really strive for more. When drama happens at work, they're not that bothered. Everything is kind of at one level, and I guess I'm just not. So for me, it's hard to read someone like that. I think when I watch my videos back, I come across as much more calm and even keeled than I am. It depends on the day, I guess. Like sometimes I think I am like this and I come across the way that I feel, like very chill. Not that it's fake, but I do find when I watch my videos back, I think I seem more chill than I actually am in my mind. He's in this horrible marriage with Edith, and Edith will, for example, throw a temper tantrum because she wants a bigger house and he says we can't afford it. And then they get the bigger house and he just like suffers trying to basically pay larger bills for no reason, and their honeymoon is a disaster. She's not even that into him, and then she randomly begs him for a baby. They have a baby, and then she's like kind of always gone or in bed and ill, which we're going to talk about. But she doesn't seem to even like being a mom that much. Like, she's also mediocre herself. He also doesn't really try to improve his marriage or leave his marriage, and she just kind of stays in this nonchalant, it is what it is sort of attitude and focuses on his teaching. But then the way he describes teaching doesn't even seem that pleasant to me. I am a reader, so I naturally play devil's advocate with myself all the time. And I will say there was something refreshing about reading a text that wasn't as intense as, say, I just finished The Count of Monte Cristo, a huge revenge story, or something unrealistic that we would usually read. 1984 I'm looking at right now, something that's dystopian. Like, a lot of books are dramatic and outside of what we would normally experience. It was kind of nice to read a book that just felt mundane and like everyday life. I even thought the author's choices, for example, to not finish his life with this pretty perfect bow on it, where maybe Edith says something really sweet and they make up and they realize that their marriage wasn't that bad, or one of his colleagues and him are like mortal enemies, and at the end of the book, at Stoner's retirement party, he gives a nice speech. They don't make up after it. He kind of gives his respects to his colleague, but he's not out there trying to shake his hand and be his best friend. They actually don't even talk after that speech. And something about that to me felt very realistic, and I enjoyed that thoroughly about this book. But again, this is such an important lesson as a person, as a reader, when someone stirs up this much emotion in you as a character, especially because this character is stirring up emotions in me because he's so mediocre. It's not as though he's this horrible, heinous villain that I'm hating for their moral compass, but I feel like even a villain has a passion. I'll also say I was a little bit clouded in my judgment of this book because the relationship dynamic of Stoner and Edith, his wife, reminded me of relationships I've seen in my personal life, which again is why it's so fun to be a reader, because things get reflected back to us all the time. The woman is very controlling and dramatic and has these outbursts and does what she does, and then the guy just kind of keels over and does everything for her and doesn't have a backbone. And I really don't like people that don't have a backbone, and this is again where my own personal bias comes in, because I'm very outspoken and I always say what I'm thinking, and I believe in life that you should always be as honest as possible, don't hurt people's feelings, but say how you feel, be passionate, and don't be rude like this wife. It's hard for me to read about a character with no backbone that doesn't just stand up for himself, because I just cannot imagine living my life that way, and it was really hard to read. It was like painful to read. We would maybe gain some more empathy for Edith throughout the novel and maybe hear some sort of backstory on why she was the way she was. We just don't. She's just not nice. Again, playing devil's advocate, she possibly could have been the way she was because maybe she wasn't even straight, because she doesn't seem into him romantically or physically at all, and because this was the late 1800s, early 1900s, she felt pushed to be in a marriage with a man. Deep down, maybe those were feelings that she didn't even come to terms with herself. Maybe she was mentally ill, and that prevented her from having a lot of energy and being the best person she could. Being a woman in that time was also very different. So although it's not ever outwardly expressed in this book, I think those all could be potential contributing factors to her behavior. Emotionally, she might be pissing me off to no end, but logically, I can still bring in empathy and think about possible reasons why she is the way she is, which is why we're readers. Her daughter turns to alcoholism. She kind of gets pregnant young to get out of their house. Like, the whole family dynamic is not good. But again, nobody seems to want to work on it or fix it. William's affair is pretty much the only time he feels passion, when he meets a student named Catherine, and they really hit it off and they have this wonderful affair, and Edith doesn't even care. She knows about it. And it is a nice moment in the book where I think we feel some passion from him. Hold on, I need a sip of water. I wrote all of that before going on Reddit and seeing what other people were thinking, and I just wanted to also give some counter arguments. You invest your love, you invest your life sums up a lot of this book for me. I don't think Stoner invested wisely in either career or his wife, his two loves, but he made the most of it and never complained. I realized after reading it that I had found something I was always searching for in a book, much like Masters described Stoner. There's something blocking this one word, so I don't know what it says. That's the whole point. I think he realized at something end that he'd achieved no self-actualization and had pretty much wasted his entire life, but it was sadly too late. This book took me by surprise. It was so beautifully written. Stoner's choice of enduring rather than changing his situation was both depressing and a lesson to those stuck in a relationship that's unfulfilling. He went about his life with a sense of stoicism and in the end accepted his fate just as he accepted his lot in life. And through no fault of his own, his decision to hold his students to academic standards worthy of the institution he taught, even at the expense of his career, was a tragedy. I wanted to simultaneously applaud his convictions and chastise his stubbornness. This is one of the most underrated books. He does have this sense of endurance. He puts his head down, he gets to work no matter what's going on, and there is definitely something very admirable in that. Alright, so I found this article, Ah Stoner, Ah Humanity, a review of Stoner by John Williams, and this was written by Christopher Willard. In my view, we teachers are driven by some deep, almost unnameable passion that, like Stoner, arose nearly against our awareness early on, and similarly, it may have taken someone else to point it out to us. That's the good side of academia. I don't feel like Stoner is ever in a position where he makes a big grand decision. It's kind of just a snowball effect of little things that happen, and he makes a choice, not always explaining or maybe even knowing why, which again is kind of where it ties into the realism of this book. That's how a lot of people go through life. Small moments such as Stoner looking out the window and seeing this gorgeous snowfall and appreciating the silence. And there are a lot of moments I felt in regards to nature that he had these connected feelings to the world around him. I just think they were infrequent and short-lived. The book lacks what novels today are so fond of. In short, cheap emotional blackmail. Demand we feel certain ways and later we feel wrung out and duped. I brought up that section of the article because I do think it's important to point out that a lot of books do go for that cheap emotional blackmail, as he referred to it, and pull at your heartstrings and kind of want you to feel a certain way, whereas I feel like Stoner was quite ambiguous. It wasn't really supposed to make you feel any sort of way. And for some people, they might have felt great comfort and pleasure in the mundane attitude of the book, or the mundane atmosphere of the book, I should say. And for me, it angered me. And that's what I love about this book, because it wasn't written in a way, again, that's telling you how to feel. Referring back to the Count of Monte Cristo, Edmond Dantes comes back and seeks revenge, and there's this huge sense of heroicism, and you know kind of how you're supposed to feel for him, that he got his revenge and you feel happy for him. But in this book, there is no real emotional map on how you're supposed to feel, and I do think again that is a very refreshing novel to read. And that's why two things can usually exist simultaneously at once. I can feel angry about how a character is and still appreciate the brilliance of a piece of work. So it is this beautiful way to show that no matter how you live your life, literature does outlive us all and keep going, and he is definitely a vessel that continues that teaching of literature. I think he just made his decisions, and that was that. It didn't need a ton more reflecting for him. Again, it drives me crazy because I feel like, not in the sense that I'm not present in my life, but I definitely analyze and reflect on myself a lot. But I think that leads to a lot of self-growth, and I don't think this character really wanted to. What I like about him though is he does look back on his life, I think, with this feeling that maybe he didn't live to the fullest, but there isn't a lot of regret. He just has kind of a blatant acceptance of himself, of everything that's happened to him, which is really beautiful. I will say that despite my own personal feelings, which are fun to identify through reading, I did enjoy it. I can still appreciate the brilliance of the novel and what it was getting across. There's many aspects of the novel, as we discussed in this video, that I did think were very impressive. I may not relate to every character we read or even enjoy reading all of them, but there's such a great way to figure out yourself more, the world around you, other people around you, a way to reflect. And that is the whole brilliance of literature. Let me know what you thought of this novel down below, because I know people are absolutely loving it. So I'm curious to hear what you think, if you kind of appreciated more of his endurance, or if you got a little angered by his behavior like I did. Very curious to hear what you think. Thank you for watching. You can subscribe for more content about books and music. I also have a dark pop EP out called Easy to Miss. Everything is linked down below. I would love to have you here, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye!